on Australia's channel. This is Media Week.
Hello and welcome to the program. Ahead, what next for 21st Century Fox as it withdraws its takeover offer for Time Warner? Fairfax in damage control over a controversial cartoon, and details of Seven's Olympic Games rights deal. But first, it's been over a year now since James Warburton took over as the CEO of V8 Supercars in June last year. High on the to-do list was to use his experience as a high-profile TV executive to win a better broadcast rights deal, which would have made for fascinating negotiations with former employers 7 and 10. Now, while that's been achieved with a new 6-year, $240 million deal with Fox Sports and 10, there's also big questions over just how the sport will look in the future as Australian production of the iconic Ford Falcons and Holden Commodores ceases in coming years. Well, to fill us in on all of this and more, James Warburton, CEO of V8 Supercars, joins us now in the studio, also with our co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Media Week. James, thanks so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
So the last time we had you on the show, I think you were at 10, the time before that 7. So how much of a fan are you of motorsports, and how much were you going into it?
Oh, look, I was a great fan of motorsports. You know, clearly, when I worked for 7, I was part of the team that actually took the sport from 10 to 7, and you know, we had a great period of time there, really, in terms of building the sport. But I've been a lifelong fan of the sport.
I mean, you've sort of kept your hand in at media because the media rights negotiations, and it's a very, you know, crucial part of, I guess, the revenue, and you reach a bigger audience. Did you ever? Was there a time when you wanted to walk away from media and not go near it?
Oh, look, you know, I think in terms of the profile of the role and what we do at V8 Supercars, I think the media rights deal was obviously a very busy time, and you know, we're working very hard with all the media. But the reality is, in terms of what we do, you know, sort of day to day and the core of our business, you know, it probably doesn't take up as much time. So it's important to have good relations. I love the media industry. You know, I love what I'm doing now, obviously, but you know, it was time to do something different, that's for sure.
So do you plan to stay a long time at the V8?
Oh, look, I'm really enjoying it. I think, you know, we have many different stakeholders. We obviously have the private equity company that owns 65% of the business, and the other 35% of the business is owned by the team owners. So we've got 17 teams. And, you know, as long as we're all enjoying it and it's a good fun and there's good unity in the business, I'll be there as long as they want me there.
Private equity, by its nature, always get in, and there's an exit strategy. Are we too soon into their ownership to worry about how they might be getting out?
You know, I think for us, the job is to get on with the business. And, you know, I said in day one, and, you know, spent a lot of time looking at the business and the overall analysis. It was important for me, the next role I took, that there was very strong alignment in terms of all the stakeholders, and you knew exactly what was expected of you and what you believed you could deliver. And so from that perspective, we're absolutely on plan. And I think, you know, if you do that, the rest of it will take care of itself. I mean, sport is fundamentally attractive, you know, and I think, again, in terms of what we're doing and how we're building an audience, we've got a very, very strong future.
You announced a big media deal earlier in the year to start in 2015. How difficult was it, I guess, negotiating with former employees?
Oh, look, you know, I think that stuff's, you know, people always talk about that, but the reality is, you know, you deal with people in their roles, and I don't think there was ever any bad blood, you know, in terms of the executives and the people that we needed to work with, and, you know, sort of vice versa. So, you know, the 10 board had to give an approval for me to take this role, as an example, and so I wouldn't be sitting here if they hadn't said yes, you know, in terms of the non-compete. And the same in terms of dealing with 7. We've had good relations, and even as we finish out our relationship now, you know, we still get on particularly well. So there's you know, it's more of a headline than a little story, if you like.
We like a headline. In terms of that media money, there's a lot more of it now. It's become a bigger part of the revenue pie.
Yeah, look, it has. I mean, I don't think there's a sport in this country that doesn't talk endlessly about the media deal when they come up. It's fundamentally important in terms of the fabric of the sport. You know, our sport has had 2 tough years, you know, 2013 and 2014. The media deal went backwards, and it was a short-term deal, you know, on the base of, you know, sort of rectifying that, if you like. And now we're in a position where the media deal that we've done is 53% higher in, you know, sort of economic value than our previous high, and ridiculous numbers on our current deal. And that's really important. This money goes to the teams. You know, this money and the dividend that goes to the teams is what it's all about. And so whether it's ticket sales, you know, sanction agreements, you know, the higher the EBIT that we can drive, you know, this money, you know, really is actually about keeping the team stable and keeping the teams participating. I think every sport has similar similar challenges from that perspective.
And from what you said earlier, we're probably just a month or so away from you releasing the 2015 schedule. How close are you to finalising dates for that?
Yeah, look, pretty close. I mean, we have to send that schedule to the FIA, you know, obviously goes globally for approval, and then around the Sandown round in the middle of the September is you know, sort of when it goes out to the team owners and to the public, or I should say the public team owners obviously get it through the commission process. So, you know, we're not that far away. You know, we won't change a lot this year. I think it's very important that we make the transition, you know, to a new media partnership and, you know, not scare the horses, so to speak. We've been very consistent with the formats. We've done a lot this year to, you know, bring a level of consistency about when we race and how we race, etc. And so those types of things have been really well received with the fans. So it's really about a consistent, you know, part into the future, and more importantly, a 360% increase in content. You know, so us being there every single week for 43 weeks is really the thing that we're missing at the moment. We're a bit too sporadic.
Have the media partners been heavily involved in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously it's up to us and it's incumbent on us in terms of the deal we put forward, the week-to-week proposition, so things like having RPM on 10, on Fox Sports in particular, to have 2 weekly shows, review shows, to focus on teams. Those types of things are as important as doing a good job at the rounds, and that's really important for us.
James, is your international strategy going to change much? I think you do New Zealand, been in Dubai, you've had a race in the States, a couple of them at very odd hours for the TV audience, I guess. And is there much like, could there ever be a V8 Supercars international circuit? Is there much like it elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, I mean, the issue for us is we race for 43 weeks, so it's very difficult to, you know, get away and, you know, string together, you know, 5 weekends or 6 weekends or, you know, something like that. I think, you know, the fundamentals for us is the equipment, if you like, and the machinery. I mean, you know, teams are, you know, have annual budgets themselves of, you know, $15 to $20 million in many cases, and so the machinery that they run, you know, is right up there in global standards, if not perhaps the best in global standards. So, you know, getting away internationally is an expensive exercise. To do the job we do, you know, we need to charter 2 747s. So we've got to dictate an international strategy that's sustainable. But we are an Australian championship, you know, and we will race here. We do so well with an Australian crowd. So, you know, my view is we need to bring it back in time-friendly zones as opposed to, you know, sort of taking the big money checks overseas. So I think that from that perspective, you'll see us have a better long-term strategy and take a bit more time, James, to put it together.
James, how tough is it attracting sponsorship this year? I mean, is there any relationship between a sort of tough media ad sales market and raising sponsorship?
Yeah, look, I think a little bit, but, you know, the reality for us is we've probably been in limited circles, you know, more tapping into the automotive market, whereas when you have a look at the platform, a lot of sponsors we talk to, the reality is, you know, many of them, we're almost like the best kept secret. We're the 3rd most attended sport in the country, 4th most watched on TV. We run 5 of Australia's biggest events. So those types of things, you know, really put us into consideration sets, which, you know, for us is about extending our sponsor base.
What about the reduced number of live, sort of, that's got some publicity, the reduced number of live to free-to-air telecasts? How do you think that will impact, if at all, viewer numbers?
Well, you know, 70% of our viewing audience comes from the 6 races that are, you know, that are geared and simulcast on both. And the reality is, with the announcements made, you know, through things like RPM, you know, with the slot there every single week, and everything that is exclusive on pay is actually replayed in 8:30 on 1 and 23:30 on 10. So the reality is the numbers will actually increase next year.
And can that media money, can that, in the old days of sport, people used to worry about, you know, more TV coverage would lower the gate, but these days they think can you get more people through the gate with a better TV deal?
Look, I think in many senses. I mean, the fact that it's, you know, streamed live on the digital platform on Foxtel is fundamentally important, and we're seeing it now. People are actually watching and sitting there watching it on their, you know, smartphones at the track. So, you know, for us, we're very fortunate because we're not trying to get there every single week. We're taking events and we're getting around the country once, so we tend to get the gate coming back because we're an annual experience for them, which is fantastic.
James, before we let you go, we've got to ask you what sort of car you're driving these days.
Right, mate. You've got to share it amongst the manufacturers. You've got 5 cars in the garage. What's going on?
None no. Luckily, I took a car into the business, and I'm Switzerland, so I'm driving a Lexus, if that's of any relevance. It's not the car I necessarily would like to drive, but it's probably good that I'm neutral in my approach of a motor vehicle.
All right, CEO of V8 Supercars, James Warburton, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We have to take a quick break, but coming up on Media Week, 21st Century Fox withdraws its $80 billion takeover offer for Time Warner. Does Rupert Murdoch plan to try again, though? We'll tell you next.